Some of the most beautiful and serene places in the world have dark and troubled histories. In this video, we explore 5 stunning locations around the globe that may seem ordinary at first glance, but in reality are anything but normal. Death beneath the ski slopes of Italy. The Italian Alps are a mountain range located in northern Italy, extending from the Dolomites in the northeast to the French border in the west. They are renowned for their breathtaking beauty and are a popular destination for hiking, skiing, and paragliding. However, beneath their stunning landscape and snow-covered peaks lies haunting reminder of a World War I battle and its forgotten casualties. As a result of global warming, a melting glacier in the northern Italian Alps is slowly revealing the corpses of soldiers who died in the First World War. Their frozen remains, perfectly mummified in their icy graves, have lain undiscovered for over 100 years. The story behind these casualties goes back to May 1915, when newly unified Italy joined the Allied forces in the First World War. At the time, Italy aimed to expand its territory and decided to wage war against Austria to annex the mountainous regions of Trentino and southern Tyrol. The conflict that followed, known as the White War, resulted in a 4-year standoff between Italian and Austrian forces. The fierce battles were fought at high altitudes, and troops utilized the landscape by digging ice trenches. They also employed mortar fire in an attempt to trigger avalanches on each other's camps, claiming thousands of lives in the process. As the battleground slowly melts away, more and more bodies appear, along with remarkably preserved artifacts. The remains often surface completely intact, still wrapped in their original uniforms, some with bullet holes in their skulls, although it is believed many of the soldiers were killed by avalanches, falling down mountains, or hypothermia than were killed during fighting. In 2004, 3 bodies were found hanging upside down from an ice wall at an altitude of 12,000 feet. Multiple findings followed, and a barracks on Scoluzzo's summit was discovered. Inside were the details of soldiers' daily lives: beds made of straw, clothes, lanterns, newspapers, and other personal possessions, along with tinned food and animal bones stripped of their marrow. All the bodies that have been found passed to forensic anthropologist Daniel Gaudio, who is tasked with trying to identify the victims using DNA extracted from the corpses, although the success rate is low. However, in 2017, the relatives of an Italian soldier were able to bury him after documents revealing his identity were found with his body on Presina Glacier. To date, more than 80 bodies have appeared from the depths of the glacier, and more will surely follow. A corpse is found on the battleground every 2 to 3 years, and as the glacier continues to melt, more are sure to follow. Not far from where the bodies of an unknown number of soldiers lie is a ski resort, where, ironically, Italians, Austrians, Germans, and Russians share the same mountain harmoniously, blissfully unaware of the bodies that may lie beneath them. Houska Castle. Houska Castle, situated in the Liberec region of the Czech Republic, just north of Prague, is an early Gothic castle and one of the best preserved structures from this period, and attracts thousands of visitors each year. However, this ancient castle, beautifully located in the remote Czech countryside, has a dark and troubling past that is not discussed during public guided tours. Built in the 13th century, the castle was located in an isolated area near the German border, but it is miles away from any water source or trade routes. This remote location has led some to believe that the castle has a sinister supernatural purpose, designed to keep evil contained rather than to keep it out. Before the castle was built at the turn of the 13th century, local residents reported strange occurrences in the dense forests of Houska. There were rumours of a winged beast that emerged from a bottomless pit deep within the forest, along with various animal hybrids that were seen crawling out of the hole and flying around the surrounding area. The local duke at the time was keen to put a stop to these rumours and offered all prisoners that were sentenced to death a pardon if they agreed to be lowered into the pit to see what was in there. The first person to take up this offer was a young man. As he was lowered into the hole, he began screaming. After he was pulled, allegedly he had turned into an old man with grey hair and wrinkles. He was so traumatized that he spent the rest of his life in an insane asylum. To quell the rumours once and for all, the Duke built a castle over the hole that is said to be the gateway to hell. A chapel was also constructed, with the Duke believing the power of God was the best defence against the dark unknown that lay beneath it. The chapel was decorated with many references to Satan and paganism, including pictures of demon-like figures and animal-like beings. In the early 1600s, a Swedish black magic practitioner named Oronto lived in the castle, and he used his time trying to discover an elixir for eternal life. However, the locals were so scared of him, 2 hunters broke into the castle and murdered him. During World War II, the Wehrmacht occupied the castle until 1945. The Nazis were said to have conducted experiments into the occult inside the castle, and it was reported that the Nazis had been using the powers of hell for their experiments. If that wasn't enough, the castle is said to be inhabited by various types of ghosts, including a frog-human creature, a headless horse, and an old woman, as well as the remains of demonic beasts that escaped from the pit. Nowadays, Houska Castle is owned by the family of Joseph Simonek, the former president of car maker Skoda, and it's open to the public. But visitors should not be fooled by this stunning fortress's exterior. It's what lies beneath that they need to worry about. Eyam Village, Derbyshire, UK. Eyam is a beautiful historic village in the Peak District National Park in Derbyshire, England. With its chocolate box cottages and ancient church, it is the epitome of a quaint English village. However, Eyam has a very dark but brave history. In the late summer of 1655, the village tailor Alexander Hadfield had a package delivered from London that contained a bale of clothing. He handed the package to his assistant George Vickers, who opened it. Shortly after, George became violently ill after developing lumps under his armpits and in his groin area that seeped blood and pus. Other symptoms such as fever, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, and pains followed, and within a few days, poor George was dead. His death was quickly followed by that of his 2 stepsons, Edward and Jonathan Cooper, and his immediate neighbours, and eventually the tailor Alexander Hadfield also succumbed to the disease. The Black Death had arrived in Eyam. under the guidance of Rector Reverend William Mompesson and his predecessor, Reverend Thomas Stanley, the villagers decided to enforce a strict quarantine to prevent the spread of the disease beyond the village limits. During the quarantine, the villagers received provisions from wealthy residents living outside of the village. This arrangement allowed the villagers to remain in their homes while being supplied with essential goods by these benefactors. If any member of a household died, they were to be buried immediately by the surviving family in ground close to their homes, rather than in the churchyard, in the belief that unburied corpses spread the disease further. As a result of this action, the disease did not spread outside of the village, but sadly, almost a third of the residents of Eyam died. Today, you would never know the trauma the Black Death brought to the village. There are a few signs of what happened all those years ago. On the outskirts of the village, there is a place known as the Boundary Stone, where it was customary to place coins in small holes. This money is used to procure provisions brought in for the villagers during the plague isolation. In the churchyard, apart from the wife of the rector, whose grave is near the church door, there are no graves of any other plague victims to be seen. Nearly all the victims are buried in the gardens of the houses or close by in the surrounding fields. In Riley's Field are the 6 graves of the Hancock family. Elizabeth Hancock buried 6 of her children and her husband in 8 days in the grounds of the family farm. Elizabeth survived. Interestingly, she was not the only one who survived after having close contact with a plague victim. This was because they had a chromosome which gave them protection. This same chromosome has been shown to still exist in those who are direct descendants of those who survived the plague and who are still living in Eyam. In total, the Black Death claimed the lives of 260 villagers out of a population of around 800. The parish of St. Leonard in Hythe, Kent. St. Leonard's Church in the picturesque town of Hythe in Kent is a large 11th century church, sitting proudly on a hill. From the outside and the inside, it is just the same as any other traditional Christian church in the UK. However, beneath the building in the underground crypt is the largest and best preserved collection of skulls in Britain. The 1,000 skulls are displayed on shelves, alongside a single stack of bones and skulls measuring 7.5 meters in length, 1.8 meters in width, and over 1.8 meters in height. First mentioned in a text dating back to the 18th century, there have been various theories about who the people were, from Danish pirates killed in battle to men who fell in the 1066 Battle of Hastings, though the most common theory is that the skulls were collected from different cemeteries in the area when they closed down, or it was used as a charnel house, a place where human skeletal remains are stored. However, these theories have been rejected by the osteologists who analysed the skulls on the shelves and found a higher proportion of females than males, and nearly 10% of young adults or children. Their causes of death are varied, with some showing clear head injuries. St. Leonard's Church is one of the only 2 churches in the UK to contain a surviving ossuary or bone house, as it is often called, and is believed to contain the remains of between 2,000 to 4,000 individuals. But who they are and how they got there is still a mystery. Port Arthur, Tasmania. Port Arthur is a town and former convict settlement located on the Tasmania Peninsula in Tasmania, Australia, approximately 97 kilometres southeast of Hobart. Today, the peninsula's stunning scenery and rugged beauty attract visitors from around the world who are eager to learn about the history of the now ruined World Heritage former prison. But the beauty of the area hides a darker history from over 100 years ago. The former prison is now in ruins, but during its time as a correctional facility, it was known as the Inescapable Jail, similar to Alcatraz Island in the United States. However, despite this reputation, 3 prisoners did manage to escape, while several others attempted but were unsuccessful. At the time, the prison was considered a pioneering new institution. However, in reality, Port Arthur was just as harsh and brutal as other penal settlements. Some suggested that its use of psychological punishment, combined with a complete lack of hope for escape, made it one of the worst prisons rather than the best, and some prisoners reputedly murdered other prisoners, an offence punishable by death, just to escape the hell of life at the camp. Even in death, there was no escaping Port Arthur, as all those who died inside the prison were buried on the Isle of the Dead, a small island adjacent to the jail. Of the 1,646 recorded burials on the island, only 180 are marked, and these belong to prison staff and military personnel. When the prison closed in 1877, the building went into ruin, and much of the surrounding property was sold off in 1889. However, by this time, the area had become a magnet for tourists. The more the buildings decayed, the more it attracted visitors. In an attempt to rid themselves of the negative status attached to Port Arthur, its name was changed to Carnarvon. However, this was short-lived, and it returned back to Port Arthur in 1927. Stories of ghosts haunting the area persist to this day, in particular the spirit of George Grover, a brutal flagellator reportedly killed by prisoners in a revolt of his brutal punishments. In 1996, this beautiful site was again subjected to death and destruction when Martin Bryant went on a rampage and murdered 35 people and wounded 23 more at Port Arthur. He was later captured by the Special Operations Group and is currently serving 35 life sentences, plus 1,035 years without parole in the psychiatric wing of Risdon Prison in Hobart, Tasmania. Like all the locations on this list, appearances can be misleading.